on Facebook, welcome. You are in attendee mode. I can't hear you. So if you have questions, use the Q&A section for that. And given time, I will try to answer them either while we're going through it or at the end if we have time. Use the chat for technical difficulties if you have some of those. But let's just have fun. Let's learn a ton and get ready for our next investment. So it all started with Janie, right? A little bit about us. Janie is our courageous leader. She's the reason we're all here. She's the one who had the vision to do something bigger and better with her life, with my life, with our lives. And she's the one who had her first property at the age of 19. And by the age of 30, over 100 units of rental real estate in her portfolio. She was able to fulfill what she truly wanted, which is be a visionary, a world traveler, a dream catcher, and many, many properties and businesses later. Here we are enjoying the next probably 2-ish months in Florida. We've already been in Florida for a month, and we traveled the world on a daily, day-to-day basis now. Myself, I am a VP and COO of many of these companies that we've created together, and I'm the systems, I'm operations, and I'm an optimizer. I'm a teacher. I'm the one who loves being here and giving you as much value as I was able to accumulate and summarize over the years. So hopefully you take it and you run with it, because I like to create these presentations to be very actionable for you. Take the core that you need, the 80-20 rule, take it, run with it, get as far as you can, and then come back, recharge with another nugget, keep on going, use the community to help advance your vision and those of the people around you. But we got started, like probably much of you are listening on the call today. This was the very first property that I got involved with, and it was in Canada. Very first property, typical, about $250,000 all in. Yes, prices have probably gone up since then, but what's probably common is this negative cash flow every month. So how many of those can we afford to buy if every property is a negative cash flow property? But then Janie, I should say, found a potential better way to do it. And we got involved in mentorship. We paid a lot of money to learn how to do this, learn it quickly, learn it well, so that, by the age of 30, I was retired, right? Actually, I was 27. Janie was 30. And so we went in and we went in deep, we went in hard. So a lot of things happened in that first year, a lot of learnings over the years to come between our Ninja Raccoon Jub on our second property. Wow. But ultimately, at the end of our first year, we had almost 10 units of rental real estate in our portfolio and $2,000 of passive income. We went to court a couple of times to follow up on some of our contractors and property managers, and we had our bumps, right? We learned, we became stronger, we built better teams and systems because of it. So all this to say that if you want to do this business and you want to do it remotely, you definitely need good basics. You need to buy properties right. Buy them right, buy cash flow, buy at a discount. And then you want to work on the team that's going to make sure that everything keeps on going and it keeps on growing with or without you in it. So that is the goal for all of us. So how did we do that? We bought this first property for $9,000. We put in 30, all in for 39, and today it's worth actually over 100,000. It got appraised, I think, about 120 at the beginning of the year, and it was part of a refinance that we did. Then we bought another one for 15,000, put 35 into it. Today, again, worth over 100,000 cash flow every single time. Then we found a really crazy opportunity. This triplex, turnkey. It was tenanted, and everyone was paying at the time we bought it. And we bought it for 32,000. This is a huge return on investment, $1,000 a month cash flow from this purchase alone. And today it's not worth 100, but it's worth close to 100. And this is just the market going up, buying right. Then we bought this one, 25,000. We put 40 into it. This one's actually being converted right now to a short-term rental property in the suburbs of Cleveland. And then we have this one that wrapped up our first year. We bought for $20,000. We put in another 35 today, worth over 110 as well. Every single time we buy for less than it's worth. So we buy equity, we buy we buy money, we buy net worth, and we buy cash flow. But how did we buy all those properties? You know, we didn't start with $1 million. We weren't given $1 million. We were very wise with the money that we had, and we want to show you exactly what we did in that first year. We already wrote a book that explains what we did, right? JK's roadmap to your first million, one property at a time. So that's there for you. It's an easy link, N4T, now for tomorrow, n4t.club/ebook. Just type that up, get your free ebook, and learn. There's a whole bunch of activities and fun stuff in there. And it's going to repeat with a little bit more detail what I'm going to talk about today as well, which is the BRRRR model of investing, the BRRRR strategy. It is an acronym, right? It is an acronym. BRRRR stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And bottom line to this strategy is, this is a system, right? If you buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, you can buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat to buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. It's a system, right? If you follow the system, you have a way to recycle your capital. But the bottom line here is the converse of that statement. If you don't have a system to recycle capital, you have a system to run out of capital. Be very, very aware of that. And so if you're starting with limited capital, maybe the BRRRR strategy is the best or an excellent way to go about it, like we did. So we are talking today, the BRRRR strategy is a strategy to buy something and hold it long term. Hold it as a rental property for passive income. Now you can buy and hold in two different ways. You can buy a property that's turnkey, that doesn't need any work. Or you can buy a property that needs some love, that needs some fixing up, so that you can force its value up. Two options. The BRRRR strategy is going to work a lot better with the fixer up type. You're going to see why in just a little bit. But the reason is that if you buy turnkey properties, it's harder to find turnkey properties at a big discount, so that the BRRRR strategy is as powerful. When you buy something that needs a little bit of work, and I emphasize a little bit of work, you don't want to get into huge rehab projects or even big rehab projects remotely at first, or maybe even ever, okay? So you want properties that need a little bit of love, but by putting in that love that other people may not want to put in, you can create value, create equity, and then we are going to use the BRRRR strategy to tap into that equity, get all of our capital back, right? So again, the BRRRR strategy is a 5-step system where you buy it right. You buy a property at a discount. That has to be number one. Then you're going to fix it up. I'm telling you, make it smaller rather than larger project, so that you can manage it easily, start building your connections, your teams, and just being in the flow of what this BRRRR strategy is all about. Once it's all fixed up, you've got an asset, you've got something that has a value, it's real estate, and maybe you bought it for 50,000, you put in 20,000, so you're all in for 70, but it's worth 100, right? That would be buying it right in my book, right? You bought it at a discount, but it's not cash flowing yet because you need to put a tenant in there, or your property manager needs to put a tenant in there, so that the rent covers all of your expenses, and what's left is cash flow. Now you have what we call an asset, something that pays you every month, but your money's still in the deal. Yes, it's paying you, which is great, but are you out of money now? Or would you like to take back the value that you've created? And how do you do that? Is you refinance. Banks, money lending institutions, they love giving out mortgages on assets. Assets being something that cash flows, because that's one security that they are going to get their payment every single month for the next 30 years. The other thing they love is when you bought it right, because then there is equity. You've got some skin in the game without actually having any of your liquidity skin in the game. Meaning what you're leaving on the table for the bank is value that you've increased in the deal. But all of your money, when they refinance, you want all of that money to come back as much as possible, right? In some situations, they might even give you back more than you put in. That's the ideal. That's a perfect BRRRR. But as much as possible, you want to leave as little in the deal once you refinance. So again, the numbers: 50,000 to buy, 20,000 to refinance. You're in it for 70, but it's worth 100. You put a tenant in there, then you go up to the bank and you say, hey, I've got something worth 100,000. Can you refinance? And they say, yeah, I can refinance you 60, 65, 70% loan to value. So in this situation, let's say it's 70%. You find a lender for 70%. Well, they will put a mortgage of 70,000 on the property, which means 70,000 comes back to you, which replenishes your purchase and rehab costs. And then the renter who's paying rent covers all the expenses and the mortgage. And of course, we want there to be some left over after all those expenses. We call that the cash flow. And so if all that's satisfied, well, you got your money back, you got cash flow, you got an asset at a discount, everybody's happy. We repeat the process. So with the same initial $70,000, you manage to buy one, to buy two, to buy three, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? $70,000, right? How much is a down payment in Toronto, Montreal, or Ottawa right now? I guarantee it's more than that for a comparable size property. And at least here you're lining yourself up for some cash flow. So what could a BRRRR property look like? Now, I'm going to show you some pictures of a BRRRR we did in our first year of investing. And this is larger than what I want you to get into. All right, this was a $35,000 renovation at the time. This was pre-COVID prices on material and labor, and we were there to heavily supervise the project. Today, this project is probably over $50,000 to do what we did, but it gives you an idea of what something that might be too big of a project for a BRRRR if you're looking to do a first one remotely. Okay, so needed some outside landscaping work. Those awnings are disgusting and old. They have to go. Turns out the roof was replaced by the bank. This was the bank-owned property. The roof was very good. We ended up repainting the entire house inside and out. We ripped out the entire kitchen, put granite countertops, new not custom, but American-made cabinets on both sides. We did not put appliances in this particular one. We cut out the wall here to make it more modern. We ripped out this corner of the wall. We actually found a chimney behind it, and then we painted it custom. Looks pretty nice. We put in some, cheap in terms of monetary cost, but we ordered some light fixtures from China, AliExpress, and all these things. Very nice. They almost look like crystal for 100, 150 bucks. Per light fixture, where if you buy them at Home Depot, Lowe's, or Menards, or wherever you shop for those things, could easily be $300, $400, $500 for that type of quality and that type of look. So as you see here, the paint, chimping across the board. We had to repaint the entire thing. Bathroom, tub, obviously. Look at that, it's a mess. The basement here, all the tiles. It was a mess. There was a little hole in the ceiling here from a previous roof leak. As I mentioned, the bank changed the roof, so we didn't have to change the roof, but obviously we had to redo all the ceilings. One thing that we weren't expecting was the garage. We thought we could just fix it. And when we were doing our due diligence, we thought we could just repair it for about $2,500, $3,000, $2,500, $3,000. And once we actually got there to do the work, the contractor who said he could was no longer comfortable. It had continued to deteriorate. And since we couldn't find a replacement contractor, the city just made us demolish and rebuild a double garage. So that threw our budget off by $17,000. So the importance of having your buffers in place and the importance of buying right, because even with that $17,000 extra, we still made it almost a perfect BRRRR with a $17,000 change in budget. So it takes some doing here. So if you buy right, is what I'm saying. If you buy right, for step number one, buy right, you secure yourself a buffer in the deal. There was an old AC in the window. We replaced that. We put a brand new AC system, HVAC system in there, new furnace, high efficiency furnace. So kind of what it looked like during the project. We got the bushes that were trimmed in front, just patching up, putting some drywall, doing some funny pictures. This is me pretending to do some work, right? Because we're not allowed to do work in the properties. So here I'm pretending to pick up a box here. So no one call me out on this. But we had a lot of fun in the process, managing and supervising the work that was being done. So that was the buy. We buy it right at a discount. We bought this property for, this was $20,000, this property. And then we ended up putting 35 into it. And so we rehab. The next step is to rent. So once we were done, we found a tenant to pay $12.50. Well, our manager did $12.50 a month, including utilities, or utilities were split at the time. Because our next step was to refinance the property, get our money back, and repeat the process. That's the BRRRR strategy. So an important concept when it comes to the refinance step is how much are they going to give you back? If the property is worth now $107,000, like it did when it appraised, well, we had a lender that was willing to give back 65% of its value. Now, programs change. Lenders change their programs for foreign nationals, for Canadians, and for Americans. But for foreign nationals, right now, today, we're mostly looking at the 60 to 65% LTV, loan to value. So if your property is worth $100,000, they will put a mortgage of $60,000 to $65,000 on it. That's how much you can take back. So the ideal situation is that you buy and rehab it for that cost or under. That's what we would call a perfect BRRRR. We're going to get into that a little bit. So different lenders, but there was a brief window about 4 months ago where there were lenders going to 75 and 80%, and that was a beautiful time to go in and do some refinances and get some loans in. But these programs come and go, and so that's why being part of a community. So when you have a need, you can tap into all the people and all their contacts all at once to get the very best products and services when you need them, as opposed to when you need them, you start making a whole bunch of phone calls to lender A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, because that can be very, very time consuming. So leverage other people's contacts, other people's resources. OPR is definitely what you want to do if you're getting involved in this type of project. So I want to show you what a BRRRR property looks like on paper, from a numbers perspective from the start. So let's say that property that we bought for $20,000, we say we renovated it for $40,000, and while we're renovating it, there are some holding costs because you own the property while you renovate it. So you have taxes to pay, you have insurance to pay, rehab vacant insurance, you have minor utilities to pay, right? Water, sewer, gas, electric, depending on the time of year. If you're doing this in the winter time, those expenses are going to be a little bit more high because you have to heat the place. So during the rehab, you do have expenses. So you're buying this cash, so there's no mortgage in this situation, okay? So let's say you buy it for 20, you renovate it for 40, and it costs you $5,000 just to own it because there's no income coming in, but it still costs you to keep it. So for $65,000, you have your project. You go in, you buy, you rehab it, and then you have it appraised because your goal is to refinance it on the back end. In our situation, the property appraised for $107,000. So wonderful. How does the number play out? The lender is willing to lend or to remortgage or to put a mortgage for 65%. 65% of the $107,000. So what does that give? It gives $69,500. That's the mortgage that they're willing to put on it. Now, when you refinance a property, there's some costs. There's, the title company, it's a closing. So there are costs involved in doing that from a real estate transaction point of view. So let's say that costs $3,000 just to do, to handle the paperwork and handle the refinance, the appraisal and so forth. Well, if you add up the numbers here, they are willing to put a mortgage of $69,500, and it costs you $3,000 to do this process. So really, they're prepared. You're going to get $66,500 in your pocket from doing this operation. So hope that made sense. They're going to give you $69,500, but it costs you $3,000 to do it. So really, it's $66,500. And we put in a total of $65,000 to buy, rehab, and hold it until we refinance. And so it cost 65, and we got 66.5 back when we refinance. So the net result is that you're going to get $1,500 to buy this property. 3, 4, 5 months later, however long it takes to rehab it and refinance it, you end up having no more money left in the property because you got your 65,000 back and an extra 1,500. And now you have an asset worth 107,000, on which there's approximately a $70,000 mortgage. So you've got another $37,000 of equity in the deal. The bank likes seeing that. You've got some skin equity in the game, but you still got all your money back and then some to repeat the process, right? So let's talk about the cash on cash return for this property. Cash on cash is basically how much you're making in that deal divided by how much you have left in the deal. So here, by the end of it, you've cashed out 1,500 and you have 0 left in the deal. So what's 1,500 divided by 0? What's your cash on cash return over that 3-month period? Over that 3-month period, you have an explosive return on investment, an explosive cash on cash return, because divide anything by 0, you get infinite. It's not a 10% return on investment. It's not a 100% return on investment. It's not a $10,000% return on investment. It's an infinite return because you have nothing left in the deal. So everything you make from that point on is an infinite return. And you can do it again and again and again. And there is the power of the BRRRR strategy of investing. With one initial lump of cash, you can just reuse it deal after deal and continue accumulating cash flow and always get your money back to keep on accumulating more cash flows. So in the BRRRR strategy, pop quiz, what does the final R of BRRRR stand for? Write it up in the chat. Make sure that you can hear me. I haven't been talking for the last 20 minutes without anybody hearing me. What does the last R of BRRRR stand for? And it's what makes the entire process so powerful. What is the final R? Write it up in the chat. If you're in Facebook or in the live Zoom call, it's repeat. You got it, Julio at Q. You got it absolutely right. It is repeat. And that's why people can have some explosive returns using the strategy. So what have we learned so far? We learned how the numbers work on a BRRRR property if you bought it cash up front. But that requires you to have $50,000, in that case, $20,000 to buy, $40,000 to rehab, and $5,000 to hold on to it. So if we had done that deal cash at the time, we would have required $65,000 to do it, which we did not have at the time. All right. So we actually did this deal with financing. You can still do a BRRRR strategy with financing up front, right? And seeing that we're foreign nationals, for the most of us listening on the call today, we're going to have to deal with asset-based lenders. That is, lenders that look at the property and the potential of the property more than how much money you make. What's been on your income tax returns for the last 2 years? What's your credit score? Are you a U.S. citizen? Do you have a social security number? Hard money, asset-based, foreign-friendly lenders are much less concerned, if not at all concerned about those things, but they are concerned about the deal. Did you buy the property right? So that's why I hammer that home so much. If you're looking to buy in the US, buy it right up front. It provides buffers, it opens up options for financing, for refinancing. It's just the way to do it. So we actually didn't have the 65,000. So a way for us to get into this deal with less capital up front was to go in with financing, because then all we need is the down payment, right? Not all the costs. So same property, but these are the actual numbers that happened for us. We still bought it for 20,000. We still rehabbed it for 40,000. We still rented it to a tenant for 1250 after we were done. We still refinanced it. It's still appraised at 1.7 at refinance, and we still got the lender at 65% loan to value. The only thing that changes is that we bought it. Whoops, I'm going backwards. I don't know why. The only thing that changed is that we're getting financing up front. So right out the gate, there's some extra fees that come into play. Two, actually. The lender that you're going to request a mortgage, who's going to approve you for a mortgage, they're most likely going to have what we call points. Meaning, yes, they're going to charge us probably 8 to 12% interest on this short-term bridge loan, rehab loan, to do the rehab project. So that's fine. But on top of that, they're going to be charging some points, which is just a percentage or two added, to the deal, just because they're the ones who have the gold, so they can make the rules. So that's when I say lender fees here. They're just going to tack on some fees just because they can, okay? And it's part of their business model to issue these short-term, higher risk loans for them. So that's an extra fee that wasn't involved with a cash transaction because there was no lender up front. And then you have a loan, right? You have a rehab loan, which is typically an interest only 6, 9, 12, 15, 18-month loan. I recommend don't take anything under 12 months if you're getting into a rehab project, a 12-month loan. If they try to pitch you on a 6-month, 3-month, don't even give yourself, pay the extra $500 if there even is a surcharge to get a longer term, because it is not worth the stress. If something goes sideways and you need an extra couple of months, just have it up front. So you're going to have this loan, which has an interest rate, and you're going to have to pay interest on that. And so, if you're talking about a property like this, even at 10% interest rate, it's not that expensive to pay for 3 months, 4 months, the time to do a rehab project. So, add on some interest payments, some mortgage. It's not a mortgage because there's no principal pay down, it's just interest, but add it up because that's a fee that wasn't there compared to a cash transaction. So we had the $65,000 that's going to cost, plus all these extra interest and lender fees. Oh boy, why is it going backwards? I don't know why it does that. So now the project is a $68,000 project, but we're getting financing, and that's the advantage. You can put a down payment. Here I put 35%. There are some programs that are much lower percent than that. Could be as low as 20% fairly easily, even for foreign nationals if you buy right. And I've seen even lower, down to 10% in some cases. So your out-of-pocket could be much, much, much smaller. Keep in mind, the smaller your down payment, the higher the mortgage, the higher the interest. So the higher this expense is going to be. But if your goal is to get in with as little as possible, well, using some leverage on the front end could be a good strategy for you. So let's say here, in our case, we did put 35% down. And anyways, there's details as to why it is that might not apply for your case, but these are the numbers it was for us. So 35% down of 68,000, we're about at 25,000. That's what's out of pocket, what we need to put in the deal to make it happen. The lender will provide the balance of 43,000 on this deal. When we were done with the rehab, it appraised at 107. The lender, the refinance level, was willing to give us 69.5. And when we refinanced, there's another closing, there's some more costs. But now we were in for 68,000, and it cost an extra 3 to make it happen. And they're only willing to give 69.5 back. So we're a little short. If you do up the math, you'll see that even after we refinanced, we left 1,500 in the deal. We left 1,500 in the deal. But at the end of the process, we had a property with 1,500 left in the deal. We had about 37,000 of equity in the deal. And we had our cash flow every single month that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. So tell me, Does leaving 1,500 in a property excite you? Is that a good thing, right? If you can buy a property or 2 or 3 or 10, and every time you leave 1,500 in the deal, is this a good thing for you? Are you excited to do this? Is this a win for you? Let me know. Write it up in the chat. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? You say, no, I'm going to pass. Or no, I want to do that. Let's see. Yeah, they're starting to come in. Excellent. Wendy says fine. Excellent. Thank you, Wendy. Lori has a thumbs up. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Yes, absolutely. Let's just compare it for a brief instance. You want to buy a single family home like this one at Chew, he'll do it. If you want to buy a property like this in Ottawa or Toronto, wherever you are in Canada or in the world, how much are you going to leave in the deal, right? How much are you going to leave in the deal? More than 1,500? Most likely. Most likely. Could be in the tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, right? This is 1,500, and you're going to see you're going to get that back rather quickly. So I say, yes, it should excite you, because the cash flow is going to return that 1,500 in no time flat. The cash flow. Oh, I just brought another important element in the equation here, because it's not just about buying with as little money out of pocket. We have to remember that we need every single one of our properties to pay us every single month, even if there's a mortgage on it. So before we jump into the BRRRR, we're going to have to run some numbers to make sure that once it's rented and tenanted and pays for all the expenses, including that new mortgage. And that's why the second golden rule of real estate in JK's world is cash flow. One is buy at a discount, so you're buying equity every single time. And second is buy cash flow. Those are the two rules. So how do we look at the cash flow on this deal? Notice that the end results, whether you bought it cash up front or you bought it with financing up front, they both end up refinancing at the end for peanuts of a difference on the end mortgage, because they appraise at the same with the same LTV. And so the cash flow analysis is the same regardless of if you buy cash or with financing. So let's run through it. So on one side, you have what's coming into the property. That's your income. So the property is rented for $1,250 a month or $15,000 a year. That's the income side. On the expense side, after you consider, any buffers you want to put in, the utilities, the maintenance, the management, the mortgage, the insurance, and the taxes. After you go through Summit, you add everything up, you might come up to something like $7,500 here. So if you subtract income, what comes in from expense, what goes out, what's left over is your net operating income. So 15,000 income minus 7,500 in expenses, well, you get your 7,500 of NOI. But wait, there's a mortgage to pay on top of it. Now we have a 69.5 thousand mortgage. In today's market, you should probably expect somewhere around 6% on that mortgage right now. If you have experience and you're in a more desirable property, you could bring it down to fives, in the fives. That's if you have properties that are appraising over 100,000. If you're in lower value properties, like properties that are worth 50,000, expect the eights on these refinances, by the way, just to put some numbers in your calculations. So in this example, we have a $70,000 mortgage. We had at 8% for this property, 8.15% at the time. And so that's a $500 mortgage payment a month or $6,000 a year. So we have to subtract that again from our NOI. And so if we do out the numbers, we see that we have $125 of net cash flow every month, even after the mortgage. So I add in all my expenses and the mortgage, because we have a mortgage now. So we have our NOI minus our mortgage expense, and we're still left with a monthly cash flow of $125. And that is another one of JK's benchmark rule of thumbs, is $100 of cash flow a month is where you should start to consider it to be reasonable. There's some real estate trainers out there. If you know Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, they just say if it's positive cash flow, buy it. Just if it's positive, buy it. But for $25 dollars of cash flow a month to go through all that, it could be argued that it's a lot of work for such a small yield. But my bigger concern is the buffer, the cash flow buffer. Your business is going to run on cash flow, and some years are going to be better than others. Some years there's going to be more maintenance. Some years there's going to be higher turnover on the portfolio. And with a $25 cash flow per month, I find it too weak of a cash flow to just be comfortable in the investment long term. So $100 at a minimum. If you can do more, fantastic. And this is when you have a mortgage, right? If you don't have a mortgage on the property, I want you to be at least $500 per month per property that you buy, per single family home. So just some benchmarks to put in place there. So now let's talk about the cash on cash return from a cash flow perspective. Again, how do you calculate the cash on cash? You take your net operating income and you divide it by the cash left in the deal. So if we go back just to the numbers here, we have $150 a month in cash flow. That's $1,500 a year. So your cash flow, your NOI after debt service is $1,500. We refinanced and we left $1,500 in the deal. So what's 1,500 divided by 1,500? It's a big old 1, but this is a ratio. So 1 means 100%. You're making 100% cash on cash return because every year you're making 1,500 of cash flow until you increase rents, and then it'll increase. Until you decrease expenses, it'll increase. Until you refinance, maybe a couple years down the line at a better interest rate. We refinanced this property in a portfolio, and instead of paying 8.25 on all the properties in that portfolio, we refinanced the entire thing, and now we are under 4%. Or is it 4.3 or 3.8? We're right around the 4% on the portfolio. You can imagine the difference in the expenses, and rents have increased since then. We've decreased expenses, increased rents, decreased expenses. And so our margins are just growing, and our cash flow is growing above the 125 that we had originally. So you can see how, absolutely, this is starting to look pretty good if you just start putting a medium-term timeline or strategy in place. Because when the market is hot, like it's been in the last 2 years, property values are increasing. So properties that you've already purchased are just gaining value. But what you owe on them or what you've put into them is staying steady. Maybe it's going down if you're paying off principal on a mortgage. But if the value keeps on growing, you're getting more and more equity just by owning that asset. And so when the market is hot and going up, you can sell to capture that equity, but then you have taxes to pay and blah, blah, blah. Or you can simply refinance, do the BRRRR strategy a second time to capture the equity in the property. I had 2 consultations this week with some people in our community, and they bought right. They bought 2 years ago, and their properties, they didn't double in value, but almost. And now they're thinking, what should I do next? And I'm saying, look, this is a beautiful time to refinance, right? You're going to cut your interest rate in half, and you're going to cash flow a lot more than you are currently. And this is the time to do it. Sell or refinance, and don't sell. So we BRRRR'd that property 3 months after we bought it. And then years later, we refinanced again. We BRRRR'd again because the value got up. And we just got better expenses, lower expenses on the property because of it. So let's not go backwards. So a little recap or a summary slide, the difference between doing the BRRRR strategy cash versus with financing, because you saw there were little differences. So if you do the deal cash, you need $65,000 to buy, renovate, and hold it during the project. And in fact, you need more because you better have a buffer. You better have some safety money in case the rehab ends up costing more, or something happens, or the project gets delayed and holding costs increase, blah, blah, blah. You do want to have, a couple $10,000 more just in case, because things are going to go wrong. just be ready for it. But at the end, you have a cash flowing property, $1,500 a month, a year. You refinanced perfectly, right? You did a perfect BRRRR, so there's no money left in the deal. It's an infinite cash on cash return. Pretty good. What we did, and I gotta stop doing that. What we did is we bought it with financing or hard money. So what we needed was 25,000 down, significantly less than 65 plus reserves. But really we needed the 25,000 down plus some reserves. So I'm just gonna put as 15,000 here. So really we need $60,000 rather than $80-ish thousand, right? So it pretty much cuts your capital required by half. The end result, we have the same cash flow. We're going to leave a little bit of money in the deal at the end. It's not an infinite cash on cash return, but it's 100% cash on cash return, which is pretty sexy, I think. But there's another component in play here, and it's the risk. What happens if the market changes? What happens if there's a real estate crash? You bought it cash or you have a loan on it. Well, whether there's a crash or not, you have a loan on it. And that loan, if it's 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months, is due in 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months, regardless of what happens in the market. So the risk is higher on that side. The risk is higher as well. I mentioned it. If the holding costs get out of control, if the contractor doesn't do a good job and you need to find another one or redo some work, or something happens, he catches COVID and there's delays. Well, those delays cost you money. Every extra month is taxes, insurance, utilities, and the interest on the mortgage, right? That keeps on coming every month. So there is higher risk to get it done and get it done quickly, right? So there's an element in there to consider. But in both cases, if you get to the end, when you get to the end, you might have something that looks like this, right? A nicely turnkey, perfectly redone. You see, this is the fixture that I was talking. This is like 120 bucks. Beautiful, simile crystal. You got the chimney there that was hidden inside the wall. We carved out. This used to be an arc, an old 1950s arc. We squared it up a little bit, make it more modern. Our granite countertops, etc. New flooring across the board. A nice accent wall. See, the AC is gone. Brand new windows across the house. A nice mirror to make the place look even larger. So we did some pretty good work here. The basement, painted the floor, made it livable basement compared to what it used to be, and had a whole bunch of fun. Putting some wall-to-ceiling curtains really livens it up, puts some color pops in there. Brand new double garage, a little bit of landscaping on the outside. So that's that. I want to give you a couple of tools, because doing a BRRRR is a project. Okay, there are moving parts, but you got the idea of how to do it, and now you can dive in to see where you might be missing certain elements to do it yourself. And one of those things was to know how much you can rent that property for before you buy it. That's kind of an important thing. So there's a website called rentalmeter.com where you can just plug in a property's address and get a good sense for what the rental market is in that location. There are other websites you can go to do some due diligence on the rental amounts that you can get, but Rental Meter is kind of a go-to as a starting point. If you have a property manager, make sure you ask your property manager as well. They're the ones who's going to be renting it and marketing the property, so they'll have a really good opinion for you on the property. Then a beautiful tool is to have a mortgage calculator, because depending on if you have an 8%, 10%, 3% loan, and if the mortgage is 100,000, 30,000, it's going to make big differences, and it's hard to do that math in your mind, even if you've got a math background. So there's a beautiful website called the cchwebsites.com. If you go to their calculators section, you can go in and get beautiful graphic representations of any mortgage that you want here. And so this is actually an example of that consultation. It's funny how it remembered it here. But this was the situation. I had a consultation with one of our community members, and this is basically their refinance strategy that I recommended for them. Rather than pay over 30 years, right, and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars of interest, well, they can accelerate the payments with the equity that they're going to take out from the refinance itself, place it back on the mortgage, and cut their mortgage in half, cut their interest by more than half, and from the money inside the same property is just being restructured and reapplied to pay it off with much less interest than originally expected. So you can play around on this calculator with the monthly payment frequency, the payment frequency, the amortization term, the interest rate. If you're doing any additional payments on the mortgage in advance, you can play with all that here. I love this particular calculator. Taxes. Did you know that in the US, you can know how much the property taxes are on any property? You can go into county records or go to a website called netrronline.com, find the county in which the property is located, and find its public records, find what the property taxes were last year, this year, and what they're going to be next year, etc. You have all that public information available to you. What other expenses? If you're looking to plug in numbers for your insurance in your calculations, figure about $600 per 100,000 insured, $600 to $700 per year per $100,000 insured in the US. Just ballpark, you'll get to know your area rather quickly after your first quotes. So as a plug-in right now, you can just put that in there. Maintenance. I recommend you put $100 per month per single family home if you're doing single family, and anything above that, it's $50 per door per month. So a duplex is another 100, triplex 150 per month, quad 200 per month, a fiveplex 250 per month, and et cetera, et cetera. So just a quick round number to plug in some maintenance, because maintenance is a real thing for property investors. In Canada, some people often tell me, yeah, I do great. I bought this property and it's cash flowing. Thing is, they don't have a property manager. They're not accounting for maintenance. They're not, is it really cash flowing after you include all of the expenses of your property? So don't forget your maintenance budget. Property management, as I said, you can plug in that number. If you don't have a number, expect about 10% of rents. Surprisingly, that's been increasing over the years after you add in all the little extra fees left, right, and center that these management companies charge. It could actually be 11 or 12%, and it's getting pretty standard. So building a rapport with your property manager, giving them lots of business might give you terms to negotiate to the 10 or 8% realm. I'm talking for residential real estate. If you're into larger apartments or mobile home parks, you should get lower than 10%. Based on that internal volume that you're giving them. Look, managing everything in one location has its advantages for them as well. And then for utilities, you can call up the utility companies to get a sense for the averages. Your property manager will have a really good idea of what the utilities are in that area based on the size of the family and the home. Or in your due diligence process, you can ask the previous owner for their utility bills, and you'll see exactly what that property has been using and costing in terms of utilities. And so there we have it, some excellent tools and resources for you to estimate the income and the expenses of your property that will eventually become your BRRRR, because we want to make sure that we have cash flow at the end of the day. If there's not cash flow, it's not an asset, okay? So I know there's a lot. I really wanted to make sure, but I knew this was a big training that we were going to go through. So the secret is out. If you do want to do a quick comparison, in Canada right now, we're at about a 3-4% cap rate. In the US, we're basically double that on average. So we can buy at half price. But if we're really using the strategies and really looking in specific markets which are strong for cash flow, you can actually double the double. You can buy, yes, at half the price, but for double the returns and get our 4x discount. And now with us also looking into, for example, short-term rentals in Florida, we can also expand to beyond the Midwest and still get that those high cap rates on our investment properties, which is very exciting as well. So what did we learn through all this? That through going through these BRRRR projects one after the others, you make your money when you buy. You have to buy right. You want the 2 golden rules of real estate to be respected. If you're trying to do the BRRRR strategy with properties that are worth less than $70,000, be prepared for a challenge at refinance. All right, be prepared to call a lot of people and probably look on the private money side, family, friends, and other capital raising strategies to do that refinance privately. Okay, so if you can, get some pre-approvals beforehand on the back end refinance that you're going to do. These programs can change, unfortunately, and rather quickly. So aim for the properties that are worth over $100,000. Will open a lot of doors, make it a lot more easy for you. But keep in mind, the higher the mortgage, the higher the value, the higher the mortgage, the higher the mortgage, the higher the mortgage payment. And so you don't want all the money, all your cash flow to go into the mortgage payment. So that's why the cash flow analysis is so important, because we do want to make sure we have cash flow at the end. So having a good number cruncher that can run through these numbers quickly is a good thing for you to have on hand. When there's a rehab involved, there are contractors. So keep a very close eye on what you've paid them, what they're doing, what they've done, and the timelines, right? Because speed is very, very important, especially if you're leveraging into the deal. Those interest payments, they keep on coming, whether the project is done or not. So you want to put as much positive and negative reinforcement on your team as possible to have them done on time or even early. So why not give a bonus for early completion and a penalty for late completion as well? Motivate them on both sides to make sure your timelines are being respected. So that is some of the big takeaways when it comes to the BRRRR. When you're buying these BRRRR properties, you're looking more into the money later category. We're talking about nice, steady $100 cash flow bumps a month, deal after deal after deal, recycling your same money. Don't expect to make $50,000 on every BRRRR property you do on a single family home. All right, but over time, and if you time the markets, and yes, you can time the markets when you already own assets, like we did. We bought it right, we refinanced, and we got some money, what we call later money, monthly cash flow. It's just doing what it needs to do. We're securing our overall passive income diversification. And then years later, the market, it went way up. We refinance again, and now we get money now because that property released an extra about $30,000, that property, just that one alone. On top of the entire portfolio, every property in that portfolio released about $20,000, $30,000 of equity. And so that's like as if we did a flip, right? But we still own the property and we still cash flow. So you can see how with a little bit more patience, buying right, using these BRRRR strategies, can do a money later and a money now later. So hopefully that was fun. Hopefully it'll help you achieve your bigger vision, your bigger reasons for doing all this in the first place. Here is a little mind map exercise I did for the year. So it's all together and hopefully getting you one step closer to your vision, to your why, to your reason, your purpose, to your fuel, to your motivation, and to those around you that you care for and love. So there's so much to this. There's so much beauty and opportunity and creativity in real estate. You get to choose, right? Where you place your money and how you place your investments. But giving your money to someone else, aka a bank right now, is not the way to secure your financial future. I think we know this. There's more deals. In every market cycle, there's deals. And we want you to get your share as well. Join into the fun, join into the action. And I want to let you know that, yes, of course, you can do it too. And we have a blueprint coming up in March that we're going to teach. We're going to go deeper into the BRRRR strategy, and we're going to start from the beginning all the way to the end. And you can secure your spot simply by going to n4t.club/blueprint. You're going to get a recording of the last 2-day training we did and a live spot in the next one, which is going to be in March. So n4t.club/blueprint is where you can go to secure your spot for the next one. And seeing that we're in Florida right now, next month, we are planning an epic bus tour in Florida where we are going to be showcasing some short-term rental properties near Disney. And fingers crossed, one of ours is going to be on the list where we're looking to close it in the next couple of weeks and it'll be ready. So on February 18th and 19th, coming up really quickly, you can join us for an epic bus tour that we are co-hosting. So if you're interested in that, all you have to do is send us an email. We are just going to make sure that you qualify, but we are actually paying for the cost of the ticket for you because of the COVID and travel. You know, we don't know what's happening. The people who show up, we're going to give them a great time. And this ticket normally is $3,333. We are covering the cost of the ticket for you. All you need to do is be qualified and show up, and we'd love to have you there. So just send us an email if you're interested, info@nowfortomorrow.club. And we're going to have a great time over those 2 days, February 18th and 19th. And next month, we have another training coming for us. So if you want to get in touch with us, this is how you do it. I'm right on time, got to run. I got another training to do. We're finishing up JK's New Year's Revolution Part 4, where we're guiding our community members from dream letter to vision board to mind mapping, which is what this is. This is the mind mapping exercise that I guided our participants, our community members through. And today we're wrapping it up with vision pacing to put it all together and to set our year on fire, achieve dreams we never even thought possible in a time frame that's ridiculous. And I hope that you can be there too. So sending you lots of love and inviting you as always to do now for tomorrow. Take care, everyone, and have a great, great day.